Welcome back to our course, Writing 242 Technical Communication. We're continuing in the first section of the textbook on the elements of technical communication. We've spoke about the technical communication in the enterprise entrepreneurial workplace, and we talked about the profiling of your readers. Next, we're going to be getting into working in teams. And this will be a common mode that you'll find that yourself will have to operate in. So it's good for us to be thinking about this. So in this chapter, we will look at the 4 stages of teaming. It's called Tuckman's, storming, forming, norming, and performing. We'll use strategic planning to form a team and begin a project. And so we'll get a chance to start to think about how that would work. And so I think you'll find that useful as we're getting into that. Then we'll be looking at strategizing for managing the team collaboration. And so collaboration is going to be key for a team. We'll look at defining the team roles in the norming stage of the improving the productivity, and finally the improved performance with total quality management strategies. So let's look at these 4 stages in the Tuckman process. Consider strategic planning to form a team and strategizing for how we would manage team conflicts. So here's the 4 stages. So you start, there's a need to form a team, and so that's where we begin. And so the forming, choosing the individuals, slowly figuring out what are the roles and responsibilities, having everybody agree upon the charter of what it is, getting into the norming, and now you get into where it's clear what are the roles of each of these individuals and how they report to one another, and finally get into the performing and the execution. So that's what the 4 stages of teaming are. And so team members need time to set goals and adjust to each other's working styles and abilities. And so that's in the working world, you're going to find that people don't work the same way you do, and they're going to be complementary capabilities and abilities. And so you can actually leverage that. So here's a few more details for what we want to accomplish in each of these. So for forming, this is where you can be talking about strategic planning and getting agreements among everybody. The storming, managing conflicts, how you come to a final agreement of roles and responsibility. And then the norming is when you determine the team roles and codify that so everybody's in agreement. And then performing is when you're actually doing the things that you said you will. And over time, you're going to have metrics and you can be improving the results of that over time. So let's look at these individually. So first, in the forming stage for the strategic planning, we have several stages here. So the members should get to know each other and assess the strengths and weaknesses. And as a result, you may find places where one person is clearly a better candidate for doing a certain role or function. And so getting that agreement is helpful. So you want to define the project mission and objectives. Everybody gets a say in this. You want to identify the project outcomes. What are the things that you're going to produce? You want to define team member responsibilities. And so you're not going to have necessarily a name associated at this point, but you identify what other responsibilities are. You'll be creating a project calendar. What is the time? Do you have to have something done in, say, a month or a year, 6 months, whatever it is? Then you can be starting to develop a work plan. What are the things that you're going to be doing? What are the dependencies? And then finally agree on how conflicts will be resolved. If everybody agrees at this point, when you actually do conflict resolution, then you're actually just utilizing the system that you've agreed upon. So backward planning can be something that you'll find useful. And you can see that, say you have something that you need to have done in 4 weeks. And so you could be here with the staff meeting, you project to where you want to be in 4 calendar weeks, and then you start to back up. What are the different steps that are needed? So here you're creating milestones that you're going to be doing for the development of this project. So basically for smaller projects, you don't need to have project planning software. Backward planning works just fine. And so this is probably a little bit less formal and more likely the kind of things that you'll end up using. A written description of how work will be completed keeps your team focused. Everybody can refer back to those agreed upon objectives and what you decided to do. A work plan will do the following. It will identify a project mission and objectives, so that's important. It'll lay out the plan for achieving the objectives. It'll establish a calendar. It will help in terms of the estimation of a project budget if needed, say there's external resources or if it's a manpower loaded project that you need to be reporting how many hours are spent for the group. Finally, it can summarize the results and deliverables of a project, and that could be something that you would be reporting out as you're getting the project started. Okay, for storming, now we need to consider managing conflicts as you have these different personalities, maybe conflicting ideas of how this needs to be done. So for conducting effective meetings, it can help individuals work through the storming phase. And so you have the agreed upon methods of how you're going to deal with conflict. Team members will need to negotiate, adapt, and compromise to achieve the team's mission. So these are all things that you want to be doing in the team. And so this is going to be one of the things that would help to build camaraderie, is if you can actually accomplish that just by within the team members. Running effective meetings is going to be important. Creating a predictable structure for meetings can lower frustration and tension, allowing you to get work done. Choosing a facilitator can be quite helpful, and having an agenda so people know what is going to be accomplished before they come to the meeting. And when all the agenda items are completed, they'll know that the meeting is done. During your meeting, start and end promptly. Address each agenda item separately. It's okay for dissent, so you can allow for that, but the goal is to reach consensus and then move on as far as you can go for each action item, for each agenda item. You want to record the decisions, recap each agenda item, and then look ahead. All of those things are useful for having in place for a successful meeting. So here's a little bit more on mediating conflicts. You want to start by choosing the mediator. Maybe one of the people in the group can have that role. And so that needs to be agreed upon. You have both sides state their positions. You want to identify the issues so it can be clearly figured out how you would go about solving this. Then with those issues, prioritize the issue. Maybe one is clearly more important to help the group reach the goals that they're trying to accomplish. Address each issue separately, and then make sure that's all clear. And then you write down an agreement that you have as a result of that. So that can be a useful process for how to mediate when you're going through conflicts. You can use methods discussed during the forming and conflict resolution methods. And so this is just repeating what we saw in the diagram of choosing a mentor, ask both sides to say their position, identify the issues, prioritize them, address them all separately, and then the result is writing down an agreement, and that would be the thing that you would take away as a result. So here are some questions that we can think about. What should your team do if one member fails to perform well? And what will you do if the conflict resolution strategies are not successful? So these are things that we can be thinking about. You can begin a conversation about perhaps removing a team member if that's the step that might have to happen. That would not be a first choice by any means. Let the team member tell their side of the story, listen, maybe even involve a supervisor or a manager. So you want to keep the integrity of the team at all possible, and you want to try and resolve the conflict as much as you can. But if one member fails to perform, this is where you could have a situation where you might have to remove a team member. So now we get into the norming. This is the determining the team roles, so define the team roles in the norming stage. And then the goal is to try and improve productivity. Members begin to accept the responsibilities. So this is important to begin to accept the responsibilities and the roles in the project. During the stage that the teams will revise objectives and outcomes. Maybe there needs to be a little bit of a tweaking, redefine team roles and redistributed workloads. Maybe what you had forecasted, that the workloads weren't quite as balanced. You plan as best you can, but sometimes it needs a little bit of tweaking. And then implement mobile and virtual work strategies. Some folks may have to be teleworking. That's going to be more and more common in the workplace now. And so that could be things that you would have to work through. And then question for discussion, what groupware or technologies could you use to keep in touch? And there's a lot of different ways of doing that. The simplest might just be email. There's things like Microsoft Teams, and a variety of other products that are out there that can be helpful for collaboration. So that will be something that you would have to work on and have everybody get agreement. So for going mobile and virtual work makes team strategies more necessary, especially if you have an international contingent that maybe you have to be asynchronous, but if at all possible, try and see what you can do to avoid that. So you want to stick to the work plan, communicate regularly, hold telecons and video conferences so you can at least have that virtual presence where everybody's together. You want to be building trust and respect among everybody and keep regular hours. So that's how we want to be making sure that we make sure we have a well-performing team when there's a mobile or virtual environment. So now we're into the last part, and this is the performing, the improving quality. So we want to be improving the performance with total quality management strategies. So your team is performing when members are comfortable and recognize their roles in a project. So everybody is in tune with everybody. Everything's working great. Now we can be thinking about how to improve or tweak things if there's anything necessary, total quality management and continuous quality improvement. These are the things that now with the performing state, we're able to think about those. These strategies focus on improving process through quality feedback loops where your team compares outcomes to the mission of the project. So to keep the keys to teaming is number one, planning. Clear understanding of the mission and the steps is important. Communicating, keeping communication lines open. And I know this is the focus of what we're trying to accomplish in this class is technical communication. And we're seeing a couple different forms of communication even when teaming. We have a teaming agreement. There needs to be the verbal communication about among each other. There's the communication, whether it be through email or some collaboration platform. Communication is all over the place with what we're doing to having successful teams. Okay, that's it for this lecture. So thank you very much.